Using the table feature to summarize a pivot table. In the previous section, we discussed all the features that come with the table function. This table function is new to Excel 2007, 2010, 2013. In previous versions of Excel, you had a feature called list. The downside to using the list was whenever your data would grow in height, it would grow with that data, but whenever you added new columns, so it grew in width, it wouldn't grow with that data. So with the release of 2007, 2010, 2013, they brought out the table function. So how do we use this table function to summarize our data in a pivot table? Well, under your table tools, so when you've converted your table, as we saw in the previous chapter, you saw that we've got our table tools in our design, and you've got a section here called, or grouping called tools. In there, you can see at any point I can convert my table back to a normal range, which again won't be dynamic anymore. I've already given it the name pivot table, but you can see here I'm now going to take this and summarize it with my pivot table. Here's the difference. Instead of using insert in pivot table, whereas it would have picked up on the hard coding A1 to H56 as we saw, now when I select the summarize with pivot table within my table tools, you can see it's no longer saying the name of the worksheet and the range A1, $A1, $H56, it's now saying pivot data, which tells you straight away that as you add data to your table, it should now grow, which then in turn will be feeding your pivot table, which now essentially will be making your pivot table dynamic. Let me show you. So I'm going to select my table arrange as pivot table, which is the name on my table. Put this into a new sheet, click OK like we did previously. I'm going to take salesperson, drop that into the column. I'm going to simply take, say, quarter, drop that into row, and I'm going to take sales and drop that into the values. Now, what we saw previously was that if I changed a record or I added new data, what I had to do was, or if I was adding new data in this case, I had to go back into my select source data, and I would have to change my A1 to H56 to A1 to H whatever. Okay. Now, what you could have also done, or what people have done previously, is added in more rows yourself, blank rows. But the problem with that is you're going to get a blank option in your pivot table. So the advantage you have now by using this table function is, if I go back into my source now, and I'm going to come right down to the bottom here, as you can see, and I'm just going to simply add a new record. Okay, so I'll just put one in here, say desktop 2013, it's Q4, December 5, 7 is Owen, South region, and you can see the formula's already worked out for me. Now again, what we know from the previous section is that data, that record, as you can see, because the formatting is being copied down, that it should have now grown with that data. Just to make sure, click on the drop down pivot table, you can see it's now including the record. But the advantage now is, if I go back to my pivot table, what I would have had to do previously, if this wasn't a dynamic table, if it's just a list, I would have had to go into select source data, change it that way, and then refresh. The difference now is, all I have to do is, when I've added my new records, is come in and refresh my pivot table. Right click, refresh data, and you can now see it's now added that new piece of data, which is fantastic, because now, like you said, it's now making your pivot tables dynamic, which means growing with your data. And again, we're going to see this feature being used with some of the formulas that we're going to need in our dashboards in the next chapters.